Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know the drill. We like to get into the nitty-gritty of interesting stuff, and today we're focusing on something a little different.
Ooh, a little different how?
Well, we spend so much time listening to podcasts, but we rarely talk about the behind-the-scenes magic that makes them sound so good.
Makes sense, like the actual recording studios. Right?
Precisely. And we found some really interesting stuff about Lace Studio Podcast by SONACOM. They are doing some innovative things. We'll also be tying that into some general principles of studio design just to give everyone that full picture.
The full audio experience.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know how some podcasts just sound so crisp and professional. We're going to break down the how and why of that. Whether you're a podcast fanatic or maybe even thinking about starting your own, I think this will be super insightful.
Definitely. And just thinking about SONACOM, they really seem to have this focus on making the studio itself ideal for recording. It's not just a random room with a mic.
Right. It's intentional. And you can see that in the way they design their studios. Like, they're often set up to accommodate multiple guests comfortably, which I think speaks to the whole collaborative aspect of podcasting.
That's a good point. And they don't just stop there. They're also really big on integrating remote guests seamlessly. Like, nowadays, you have people all over the world collaborating on podcasts.
It's true. And SONACOM really highlights that.
Yeah.
They've got the tech to bring in guests via phone, video, even specialized lines. And it's not just about the tech either. They've got skilled producers and engineers who know exactly how to make everything work together perfectly.
It's that human element that often gets overlooked. I mean, the technology is crucial, but without someone who knows how to utilize it properly, you're not going to get that high-quality sound.
It's like having a fancy camera but not knowing how to adjust the settings, right?
Exactly. And speaking of settings, let's talk about microphones. Because, obviously they're at the heart of capturing great audio. And what's interesting here is that it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
You mean different voices need different microphones?
Exactly. Skilled engineers actually choose microphones and tweak those settings based on each individual voice. And also taking into account the style of the podcast too, right? Like a conversational show versus maybe an audio drama might require different approaches.
It's all about capturing those unique nuances.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another super important term you'll hear a lot. Insonorisé. That means soundproofed. Creating that quiet, distraction-free space is essential for clean audio.
SONACOM actually goes a step further, talking about aiming to sublimer votre voix to enhance your voice's natural qualities, which, that's a pretty cool concept. But that's where this whole idea of acoustic treatment comes in. And it's a lot more than just soundproofing, which is about blocking outside noise. Acoustic treatment deals with managing sound within the studio itself.
So it's not just like sticking some foam on the walls.
No, it's way more nuanced than that. The goal is to achieve uncompromised vocal quality. And to do that, studios use various materials strategically to control how sound reflects and gets absorbed.
So I'm picturing strategic placement of these materials, right? Not just random foam squares everywhere.
You got it. The goal is to strike this balance where the sound is neither too echoey nor too dead.
So it's like defining that sweet spot for audio clarity.
Precisely. Now, if we want to get a little technical for a second, studio acoustics is basically the science of how sound behaves within a specific space. It looks at how sound waves reflect off surfaces, get absorbed by materials, and even how they scatter, which is called diffusion. Good acoustic design is all about minimizing those unwanted reflections that muddle the sound, while also allowing the engineers to, shape the acoustics for maximum clarity.
So they're kind of like sound sculptors in a way.
That's a great way to put it. You'll often see setups with hosts and guests around a desk, often using headsets to keep their communication clear and separate from what's being recorded.
Yeah, I've definitely seen those setups before.
It's all about creating a space that's both comfortable for interaction, but also, acoustically controlled so the sound capture is optimal.
I think the key takeaway here is that every little detail matters, right? From the microphones to the wall treatment, it's all carefully considered to create that high-quality listening experience for us, the audience. And it goes beyond just noise reduction. It's about really shaping that sonic environment.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And SONACOM, especially with Let's Studio Podcast, seems to really be a leader in this. They emphasize this blend of cutting-edge technology and, like we talked about earlier, real human expertise. That's what makes the difference in delivering a high-quality recording experience, both for the people recording and the people listening.
So what does all this mean for the average podcast listener or even aspiring podcaster?
Well, understanding the elements of a well-designed studio, whether it's Sonacom's or based on the principles they use, helps you appreciate why certain podcasts just sound so much better. And if you're thinking about starting your own podcast, these are definitely things to keep in mind.
Knowing what goes into it can definitely elevate your own recording quality, even if you're working with a simpler setup.
Definitely. And it makes you think, doesn't it, about how the recording environment itself, the space, the tech, the expertise, all of it plays a huge role in shaping the final product and how we experience it.
Right. It's that silent partner that we often don't realize is so crucial.
Exactly. It really makes you appreciate the artistry and the science that go into crafting those podcasts we love listening to.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with something to ponder. How much does the recording environment impact our engagement with the content and how we connect with the voices we're hearing? It's something to think about next time you hit play on your favorite podcast.
Definitely food for thought.
Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of podcast recording studios. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.